I'll probably aim for a blackish brown like this, and then just beaten metal. So probably gonna apply a lot of weathering and tone it down and just have a few scratches in the metal and the helmet just brownish black. I have this black leather that I haven't really tried yet, so maybe that could be a good base color. Yeah, I think this might even be better as a shadow color, so I might just use a more brownish tone and then use that as a shadow color. I think it's just the white base coat, so we need a few thin layers. Yeah, let's see. I'll go for that brown and then shade it down. Okay, so I'm going to start by emphasizing on all those scratches and indents that we have here before I'm going to shade everything down again, and that way I can also work a bit on zenithal light. So I'll just use different browns and also different beige tones, and then some off-white again. So now, like I said, use the black leather to both wash and in a controlled way, put the color where I want it to be. So I guess now I'm just using glazes to get the color in and tone everything a bit down. So sort of like you would apply a wash, I guess, just a tiny bit more control. That's the thing, right? Ink is what I feel Games Workshop, for example, sells. I would consider that ink, or the army painter stuff and all of that. And you would probably want to not thin that at all. So use ink of that sort right out of the bottle. But what I'm doing here, I'm just using really thinned down paint to colorize. So I'm basically trying to get that red tone into the brown again. So for example here there's this dark, almost black reddish brown, and for that I mean it depends. To be honest, it does depend quite a lot on the color you use, but for example here that's about my consistency, so this maybe. And I just use a couple of washes, that so that there's no pooling and that the changes are subtle. I mean, you can go a bit more brutal and mix a thicker consistency, but I feel that's subtle enough a color change for me, and I even think it is a bit on the intense side for especially when the colors are pretty dark. I try to be a lot more careful, and also, like I said, this is going to be a longer process. It's not going to be done with 2 or 3 layers. I feel like I'm losing control when using inks because they just shade down so much. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that overall. Like I said, I'm going to bring back out the scratches, and I'll start with the darker beige. See how that looks, so that I have a bit of yellow in there. Okay, over here I think it's actually fine. Let's see. Like I said, I just want to maybe give this a bit of the yellow back. So let's see. Paint a thin layer over that so that we just get the tint. Okay, I think you can see that the reason why I do this is to focus a bit more light here again. So this just adds more contrast, more drama, more interesting areas. Okay, and here this is actually not sculpted, but you can also, like I said, go back in and emphasize some patterns that we created here by chance. Yeah, I think I like it. It's an interesting gradient. Got some texture. Okay, we also need to do that over here. And you know, you can really go crazy with that texture. If you want it a lot more battered, then just do the texture everywhere, and yeah, you can put the shadows or the shade colors in differently. You can also, if you want it to be a bit more rotten, add some green maybe, or red, like a rust that will come through from a lower layer and so on. And it's actually not that intense or time intensive, and it can also be done on smaller miniatures easily. Actually, can we simulate this here? So this edge, right, looks up and catches a lot of light, and the other one, okay, we can't really simulate that, but yeah, the edge that looks up is always catching the light. So the edge that faces down, you just ignore that. You don't put any emphasis on that at all. Yeah, I might give this one one more pass maybe with the red, because I feel this is more lively, more intense. But then again, it can have a bit of a variance. It doesn't matter really. Right, so the second part of the video is going to be about painting metallics, and I have this middle part here that is now primed black and a few rivets on the side that I'm going to paint in metallics, and I'm using scale color metallics for all my metallics at the moment, simply because the size of their pigments is not really too large, and you can smooth out and paint really thin layers without getting too much of grain, which is often the problem with other metallics. And for my purpose, I usually only use the heavy metal and the speed metal. Those two are usually enough, because most of the effect of the metallics is coming from the washes that I use. And as you know, I do mix my own washes from just water and a tiny bit of flow improver to break surface tension. And you know, you can just use any color that you want really for coloring your metallics. In this case, I'm going to stick to a more neutral brown, maybe brownish red, and dark weathering, sort of like a burnished metal. And of course I'm going to add black to that mix. So first things first, I will apply a base coat of heavy metal, and the black base coat helps to get a good coverage. If you were to paint metallics over a white base coat, you need a lot more layers to get some coverage. This is the first layer of consistent coverage of the metal, and now I'm going to start applying the washes. And when you do a less weathered metallic, what you can do is you just take away all of the shine by applying some gray, and then get some shine back on top of that. That way, you know, you can dull down some areas and without doing too much weathering. But in this case, I'm just going to go for a really dark, really brown, red weathered metallics. So going to start by mixing petroleum gray and black, and we'll see how it turns out. So petroleum gray is a bit more of an oily color, and usually I'm working with really diluted colors. I'll try to speed the process up a bit just for the sake of the video. But yeah, the more diluted your colors are, the smoother your results are going to be. So the more layers you use, the better it will be. So right now you can see there's a lot of shine going on, but that should be dialed down as we apply those layers of washes. To avoid some pooling that is going on there, I'm going to add a tiny bit of dish soap to my painting water. It's sort of like a flow improver. And I'm going to start adding some reddish browns, like this Dubai brown here, as well as establishing shadows. I'm also establishing different color variations at this point. And I'll go a bit brave here and just add thicker layers, just stippling it on, sort of like the way we established all the texture here. I'm doing the same with the metallics. And since I really like the reddish brown that's being established here, I'm going for my trusty Best Shade Brown by Games Workshop. Trying to not go too uniform, mixing it up a bit, adding some color variations. Do this a bit randomly. And like I said, I'm going to cover these first layers with some darker layers. This already looks rather decent, but I want to do a bit more. And I think I will be going for a lighter, more reflective area here, so I'm not going too intensely with the red here. Okay, like I said, this already looks rather decent. I'm just not 100% happy with this shine here. I mean, you could leave it at that, right, if you were just aiming for some credible metallics. Let me hold it like this. I'll definitely bring back some of the shine already at this point for the rivets, and I'm focusing on the upper half. Especially on the lower ones, and as I move up I touch a bit more of that rivet area. Not to forget this one back here. And like I said, or not like I said, but I recommend just having two containers of water to be able to keep the pigments, metallic pigments, separate. Yeah, now I'm going back with the petroleum to darken everything a bit more and take away the rest of the shine that I don't want to have here. And like I said earlier, just here I want the contrast between the two parts to increase a bit more, so I'll just black line this right now. So from here it is just a mixture of, or an alternation of, darkening everything, and then I'm going to start adding scratches and dents, you know, where the metal gets cut or hit, and you will lose some of the black burnish and also the rust and all of that. And I'm going to gradually add those and then wash over them again, so you have actually fresh cuts and old cuts, and yeah, you get a bit of realism like that easily. And I'll just use the speed metal, which is the lighter metal color by Scale Color, and it's almost like just pure metal pigment. Feels a bit like there's metallic pigment mixed with white, and you can use it to get a lot of the shine back. It's maybe not that evident here. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, as you can see, there's already some shine back, a lot of shine back actually. So I guess I'm going to also touch the rivets again. And I mean, you can see there's barely any color on the brush, and I'm just adding really thin layer, just the tiniest hint of metal pigment. And like I said, since it's not really thick or large pigments, you can paint really thin layers and you won't get any grain. You know, the way metallics tend to look grainy, you don't have that with those colors. You can really just paint a gradient from a solid color to a reflection. Okay, like I said, in this here I'm just building up some cuts, and I will repeat this process because I'm going to shade that down once again. Trying to get some interesting shapes down, not just pure cuts, but maybe some areas where you have some bludgeoning damage. Just adding that detail makes the whole thing a bit more realistic, and it feels like this is actual gear that's being used in combat and that gets hit and so on. Also just randomly emphasizing the edges here. Because that's where the metal will get hit, also from just normal use, like putting it down. putting it somewhere. And then, like I said, here I want some reflection to show, so I think I'm going to try and build that by crisscrossing a few lines here. Not painting an area, and I'm doing that to give the impression of texture. Just getting some random patterns on. Okay, so you can see as we move it, there's some light catching here and reflections, and then as we move to the front it's getting dull again. So yeah, I'm already rather happy with that. Just getting some really intense reflections on the rivets. Okay, and darkening some areas again, just to get a tiny bit of the shine back out so that it looks like we have some rust and discoloration going on top of those cuts. Leaving it intact up here. Said just because this is an interesting area, I want this to be rather dark. And you can, you know, go up to almost pure black and have really stark contrasts. Maybe I'll try that back here. So I'll go for rather dark, almost black, and then a bit of a gradient up here. the same in the front, just alternating because it takes a while to dry. Alright then, so like you saw, just sometimes dabbing your finger on gives that extra bit of chaos that you can't really plan with a brush. You know, it squishes the color flat and it just goes somewhere and it's a bit unpredictable. And the last thing that I'm going to do with a rather dark mixture, I'm just going to get back some of the shadows that those cuts would have, like here, and I'm making sure that I just hit areas where there's a really hard lower edge. And again, it's important not to make those too thick. Okay, so that was an intense one, and I think this one I'm also going to focus on a bit. Okay, maybe some tiny dots somewhere, just randomly adding darker areas to, for example, those red or rusted areas up here. Okay, and I like how the color almost blends in with the rest of the helmet here. So it kind of looks like, you know, the two materials have aged together. Yeah, just giving you one last look. Like I said, I went from a bit of a darker spot here to more of a lighter area, and of course the weathering. Alright, one more thing that we can do, and I learned that with my necromancer. We do have the rivets established here as some really light areas up here, and some shadow areas and dark areas down here, and just adding a bit of the rust color down here gives the impression of a lighter color from below, and that gives an interesting effect, sort of like there's a reflection going on from below. I think you can see it on the video, and yeah, that's just an interesting effect. It won't work on all of them since those are already facing upwards and there's no real shadow established here, but at least for this one I think that's an interesting effect that we can add. Right, also, you know, it's a bit of a technique that I nabbed from painting non-metallic metal, but just because you switch medium and you have metallics, you can still use techniques that look good in another medium and apply them to different medium. Okay, so one last look. Starting with the front, with a bit of darker area, and maybe we can just randomly make this a bit more light, just for the sake of contrast. Just this one spot catching a lot of light. I think that looks okay and looks interesting. So going over the rivets, getting a bit more light here with a few black areas, and I left this side a bit more reflective, and then have a few dents up here, and go back and have a bit of a shiny area with some texture. There's no consistent layer, shiny layer here, but the overall reflectiveness is just higher. And then go down and have a bit of a black area blending together with the rest of the helmet. So yeah, just wanted to show you that there's a lot of variation that you can do with metallics, and also on smaller areas like this you can add a lot of variation. And don't be afraid to try new things and also texture all these parts. Yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.